Welcome to Yada Yahweh. We're setting in tonight for Craig, who has his beautiful wife taking a second tour of their honeymoon. So this week and next week, it's going to be myself, Kirk, and JB. How are you guys this evening?
Just fine. Good evening. Good.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I got out of this week with my shirt on. I'm glad it's finished, to be honest with you. Yeah. It was a particularly tough week for me, but business-wise, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I kind of wanted to open up, with this story. Do you guys ever watch Discovery Channel or Animal Planet or any of those? I watched this incredibly beautiful show called The Last Lion. Have either of you had a chance to view that? If you haven't, really take the time to do it if you get a chance.
Okay.
It's a beautiful story. I mean, they follow one lioness with her 3 cubs, and she decides that rather than sacrifice her 3 cubs, what she's going to do is cross this marsh area and this river, and she's going to raise her cubs over there where nobody's at, and have a tough go of it. But she wants to raise her 3 cubs no matter what. And she's attacked by another group of lionesses, 6 of them, and she takes the leader and goes head to head with her. But I mean, of course, ends up getting beat down with all 6 of them. She ends up losing, but she cuts the one's eye. She takes one of her eyes, and as the thing progresses, what ends up happening is one of her cubs gets trampled by a group of water buffalo and killed, and its back broken, and then she thinks the other one's dead. It turns out in the end he's still alive, but she goes after the head bull for killing her cub. And this pride who originally attacked her, these other 6 lionesses, are watching her, and they're seeing her take on a herd by herself, which is really kind of unheard of. And, they end up joining her, and she ends up becoming the leader of their pride, and then in the end, the little lioness the little male lion comes out. And at the end of the show, they mentioned that 50 years ago, there were 400,000 lions in Africa. 50 years ago. And today, there are 20,000.
Wow.
Now, that put me to mind of these Nephilim that were running around, killing the animals on the earth and the birds in the air for sport, for fun. And Elise Benet and I had been having some conversations about putting, so as it is in the beginning, so shall it be at the end. And I thought, how fitting is that?
Mm-hmm.
How fitting is that? When you figure the odds of a lion even making it to a year old, and then, even past that stage, especially the males that, end up being ejected from the pride, and they have to go out on their own, and then only 1 in 7 of them make it. The odds of, say, a male lion becoming the head of a pride are real slim, 1 in 20, something like that, maybe 1 in 30. And to think somebody's going to go out there with a .375 H&H Magnum and shoot one at 100 yards, which really doesn't take a lot of talent. Just to say I've bagged a lion is kind of despicable. What do you guys make of that?
Well, I'm not a hunter, so I did shoot something once, but that kind of made me like, why am I doing this? Just because everybody did it when they were kids, and out in the country. But I don't see any reason for it. I mean, we breed animals for food, so that's not a food source. And it's just...
I've never heard of a lion burger.
No, I mean, so you can't, eat them anyway. So it's all for just sport to say I'm king of the hill or something. I don't know. I don't get any kick out of it. And I don't see why you would, especially with modern rifles and stuff. It certainly isn't much of a sport.
Enjoyment out of it. Yeah, I have hunted.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't do it frequently, but I went out, especially when I was younger with my grandfather. But it was, we would go bow hunting, and we would track the deer. We, basically track it, find it, set up, shoot the arrow, kill it, go over, collect the, take it home. We'd clean it, we'd gut it. We didn't let an ounce of meat on it go to waste.
Well, that's a different thing.
It was enjoyable to, it was an experience learning to, how the animal thinks and tracking it. And two, I love the taste of venison, and you can't go just buy that in stores.
Right, I've got some in my freezer. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I hunt, okay? I have in the past.
As long as you're eating what you kill, there's
plenty of it.
Hunting for sport and eating what you kill. Hunting for food and hunting for sport are totally different.
And I would agree with that too, Kirk. As long as
I'm not anti-hunters, but back home they always there was plenty of deer if they didn't shoot them because they pretty much had wiped out the
wolf
mountain lions, and also there's nothing to eat them. They would just overpopulate, and then you got real problems there too. So.
Well, they did the same thing in Iowa. When I grew up, this would have been unheard of, but my mom was telling my daughter that she had 60 deer in her yard the other day.
Wow.
60 deer. I mean, in town. But see, they killed so many of the coyotes and wolves that there's nothing really to keep the deer down over there. I mean, there are no bear or cougars and or mountain lions in Iowa.
The predator, and they just grow and grow.
Yeah.
So we have a tendency to destroy all the natural balance of things, and it just that's the part that kind of bothers me more than a hunter. I mean, it's just you change everything. Change all the odds, and then they overpopulate, and then they get diseased, and kill them off that way. I mean.
Yeah. Well, it isn't even that, but but no matter where you fall down on that, I mean, certainly killing a lion is just outrageous at this stage of the game. I mean, people should know better.
Absolutely.
But to go from 400,000 to 20,000, and to think about so at the beginning, so shall be the end, and to think about how angry Yahweh was because these people were just out there killing animals for the hell of it.
Mm-hmm.
That tells you about the position we're in, I think.
Yeah. Well, I don't think, if you want to extrapolate a little bit further, I mean, in America, they, killed off the buffalo, or the bison, I should say, primarily so it's to starve the Indians. I mean, so you've got two horrible acts going on there. You've got, I always get tickled when people talk about Audubon, the artist. I mean, it reminded me he shot like 8,000 birds and stuffed them so he could paint them. I mean, and they go, what?
Yeah, the Audubon Society. Yeah, it's like everything in the world.
The first thing you do is have him stop shooting them and stuffing them so you can paint them. But anyway, I mean,
I'm just.
We don't have any priority about anything. We just seem to be rotten.
It doesn't take much of a person to figure out. It doesn't take a lot of consideration to figure out we're headed down a bad road.
Yeah.
I wanted to start, and I realized we kind of went over this, and I just wanted to do it again. Because one of the things that really bothers me is, and I know it bothers you too as well, is when people make a mockery out of the words. I mean, it's how agnostics and atheists are created. Religion has a tendency to do that. I'm sure you could tell us about it, JB. I mean, when you read about a flood that was worldwide, things don't work that way in the atmosphere. It doesn't rain 100% of the places at the same time for 40 days and nights. It just doesn't happen like that.
That was the thing that most clicked for me coming through, reading through Yada Yahweh was, I realized all my objections to God were really just objections to religion.
Yeah, and they were objections to poor translations. Not just poor intentional. Intentionally poor translations. And the reason that what I want to hit on first is the Mizmor. Consider this. Because before the mountains were born on the earth, meaning land, ground, that would be Eretz, and the world, and that's Tebel, T-E-B-E-L, that means planet, was brought forth violently, even from before the time you were infinitely powerful and always existed as God. That's Mizmor 92. So, there is a distinction between an area of land or dirt, Eretz, and the globe, as in the entire planet.
Yahweh had a perfectly good word for planet, and if he wanted to use it, he would have.
Right, because he's a very, 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 very precise communicator. Now, our translations might not be very, 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 very precise, but I can tell you he is. Now, let's go back to the flood account, to Bereshith 6:17. Behold, I will bring a flood of water upon the Eretz, which is really territory, earth, ground, region, to destroy all related humans, in whom a spirit was born and lives from beneath the heavens. All who are related in the region will expire. Okay, he said, Baha Eretz. So he said, in the region. He didn't say everybody on the planet. He specifically said, in the region. And, it's really important. That's a very, very important distinction, because it eliminates people from making a mockery of Yahweh's words. What do you guys think?
Well, he's very precise. I mean,
as long as you translate it right.
Yeah. One of the things I didn't really think about in translating, I just do a little bit of a aside here for just a second, is, in English, what's difficult for us who speak English is that we have 640,000 words. And Hebrew, and especially ancient Hebrew, had about 5,000 words, and from those there were 1,500 roots. And so 2-letter words that turn into 3 and 4 and 5-letter words on there. So he's working with a small palette, and it's very precise. And when an English translator gets hold of something, my God, they've got 100,000 words to choose from on almost anything to mess it up. So without sounding well, in any case, what I'm saying is when I go back and do these little translations, I've been doing a bunch of them this week on some other things, and it's so much easier. The language is so precise, and even you go back to that root in English, it would be, I don't know where they get these things from, but they have a big palette to choose from, so they can twist it as much as they want. It's very hard, where obviously it is very clear when you do it in Hebrew. I just wish I'd originally spoke Hebrew.
Well, one of the things
what's interesting with that, though, is the way that Hebrew has so many words, like take the word, man. There are about 5 different words in Hebrew which convey the concept of man, each conveying a slightly, a different variation. Adam, speaking of, descendants of Adam, Enosh, Ish, individuals. Each one conveys their own aspect. In English, we really just have the one, and then we have to take 10 words on top of that one. Man with this. Man, we have to explain it. But it's interesting that they had so many fewer words, but they also had so many words that had the same or slightly very similar meanings. Mm-hmm. Whereas English doesn't have that. We have one word for human.
Right. So,
Well, what I see in translations over and over, and you know, of course, I see this primarily in debate platforms, is that, you know, people go back to the most recent corruption. That's what they use.
Sure.
You know, that's where you get these people quoting the Lord and calling it Torah the law and so forth. You know, you see it all the time. And so when you show somebody,
get the Christian Torah, I'm a basic believer. I go back straight to the truth, straight to the King James version.
Yeah, boy, there's truth for you.
These new translations are horrible, but the King James.
But you know, you can find it. I was doing this with somebody this week, and I just want to point out to her that Yahweh's name versus was changed to Lord, and so we went to Strong's, which is probably the most Christian of the dictionaries, and we went to it and we found what it says in the Strong's. It says it writes it out in Hebrew. Then it says this is Jehovah, and this is which means the Lord. And so I said, well, even though they're twisting it, Jehovah is kind of a lousy, is a sorry way to try to say Yahweh. But if you look at if you look at the Hebrew word, it's Yahowah. I mean, there it is, Yahweh, right there in front of them. So they don't even, they can't hide it. They don't choose to hide it. You just have to be so dumb not to look it up.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, first of all, Hova means bringer of ruin. I mean, that's what it means. So.
But I mean, besides the J and the V and all that sort of thing, I'm going, you know, I'm always amazed that they leave so much in there that you can figure it out that they're lying.
Yeah, well.
So why would you quote an English Bible that goes from Yahweh to Jehovah to Lord? I mean,
not very smart, is it?
No, you wouldn't think so.
Most people are convinced
fool.
that they aren't smart enough to think on their own, and they need someone to tell them what to think.
Well,
I've had
yeah,
so many times where I've had that conversation with family members. My mom's that way. You know, we will have a conversation, but she's like, "Oh, I'm just not smart enough to read all that on my own." Yeah, you are. Anyone can do it. You know, it doesn't require intelligence. It requires effort.
Yeah. You have to pick up a book and actually look up a word.
You know, something else
So
that
most
we
people
actually
don't want
see a
that.
lot
They just
of,
want
too,
someone to tell them.
Yeah.
is I'll get people tell me that, you know, the Torah must have been written. You know, the Torah must have been written because both Noah and Abraham. Well, you know, Yahweh, when he's talking about Noah, talks about how he found he found Noah to be agreeable, but he doesn't say he read my Torah. He found him somebody he actually, obviously he wasn't one of the people running around tearing up the planet, killing all the animals and creating strife, and just being a despicable person. He was not. And so Noah found favor in Yahweh's eyes. And, you know, Yahweh goes on down here and he says, and you shall be included and come into the ark, and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. And Noah did everything which God instructed him to do. And isn't that really what Torah means? He'd become a living embodiment of the Torah, which was simply following instructions, which is what Torah means. So if somebody wanted to say he followed the Torah, you know, in that regard, yes, he did.
He followed Yahweh's instructions.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's another nail in the coffin of law.
You should always explain. You should transliterate titles, but you should also translate the title so people know what it means. Torah is a title, and it has a meaning. Transliterating it as Torah without explaining the meaning of Torah loses everything.
Well, one of the other things I want to point out is there's been a good amount of people that I have just literally kicked out of unpopular truth because they keep having to hang on to the book of Enoch. Now, the reason that, you know, I don't care if you believe in fairy tales. I really don't care. I don't care if you like Three Blind Mice, the song. It doesn't bother me, really. But if you can take one of these fairy tales and you can use it to mislead others, or if that book is used to mislead others, and you prefer to hang on to that book. It's sort of like the Masoretic, the Messianic Jews, rather, that want to hang on to Paul, but they go, Paul's misunderstood. He was pro-Torah, which is, of course, insane on its face. But, they're pushing the Torah, and they think they can still hang on to Paul. Well, I have this, maybe not to the same degree, but I have a problem with the book of Enoch, especially in my group because, we're called to be watchmen. And if that book is used to get people onto the lunar Shabbat, which I think is completely out of line with the Torah, in fact, I know it is, then I have a problem with it because it's misleading people. Now, we've been reading last week and starting now again, the flood account. And so I want to look at this account here in the book of Enoch. Now, I'm just going to read, and this is Enoch, and this is 88, chapter 88. Then one of those four went to the white cows, and these are angels, by the way, Malach, and taught them a mystery. While the cow was trembling, it was born and became a man, and fabricated for himself a large ship. In this he dwelt, and 3 cows dwelt with him in the ship, which covered them. And it says, Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Wow. That doesn't seem to jive with the account that I'm hearing, where Yahweh gives direct instructions and measurements on how to build an ark. How about you guys?
No, I'm just amazed somebody's listening to that. I mean, why not just go all the way and go to India and come up with some of that stuff too, from the Hindus? I mean, or Shiva. I mean, it should even, you have to be a nut.
Well, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm thinking. I can't understand how in the world anybody can say something that, that clearly opposes the Torah. That's not what the Torah says. If, Yahweh gave clear instructions to Noah about the specifications of the ark, how to build the ark, the measurements of the ark. It wasn't a mystery, Well, it wasn't a mystery laid down from for Malach, was it?
No. Well, is there a book of Enoch that's prior to 4th, 6th century CE?
Well, I've talked with Craig about it, and he says, well, I doubt if there's a smattering of anything. They found a smattering in the DSS, 2 or 3 lines or something like that. And they always talk about how it's found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. But it goes back something like 300 BCE or 200 BCE, supposedly.
And the oldest one we have is actually not even in Greek or Hebrew. It's in
Aramaic, isn't it?
Aramaic?
No, it's an Ethiopian language. I can't think of what the name of the language is. What's that?
Coptic would be.
Yeah, that might have been it. But it's a translation of a translation of a translation. And then they translate that back into Hebrew and say, oh, we have it.
Yeah, well.
Yeah,
if you claim that that's your own your own saying, so I wouldn't know what to say to somebody like that after they're that crazy.
Well,
why do you need something besides the Torah when we hadn't even studied it all the way through?
Right. I think it was Craig that said he understands about 1/1000th of the Torah, and he was being kind to himself. When we figure the depth of the Torah, and we figure that, within the Torah, like in the second line when he's talking about making the universe, he has all the elements listed. In the universe, they can all be found in there. The Torah codes that we do not know. We find some of them, but we don't know most of them. I'm sure of that.
You go back to Psalm 18. Yahweh's Torah is complete and perfect.
And lacking
That's
nothing.
all you need. I don't need anything beyond that.
No.
Right. So when I'm reading,
I guess the motive to dig up a book like that is because you want to go down some other road. And you want
right. You got to know a mystery that somebody else doesn't know. And yet you haven't even studied Torah. I mean, why would you bother? You know.
Yeah.
But you know, we'll move on. Yahweh said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and all your household, because indeed I have seen that those with you are upright by means of my presence in this home." So from the perspective of the translation, Be'eth, meaning home and family, right, to Berith, meaning covenant, relationship, or marriage vow. In Hebrew, Aresh, meaning head, this suggests that the Scripture confirms that the covenant's based on what? A home and a household. And thus is familial.
Right.
And, you know, that's important. You know, Yada was trying to come up with a name, you know, to use other than covenant. It's sort of like the way I don't like the word salvation. I think it's such a minimal, you know. It's kind of a minimalist look of being amplified into another dimension. I was saved. You know, I was enriched. You know, has anybody come up with anything? I mean, really? I was trying to consider it, but you know, the way that he always translates it is a familial covenant relationship, and you know, I guess you could just say familial relationship.
Well, it's keyword family. I mean, what could be better than that anyway? Well, everything, every metaphor is father, mother, child, family.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the further and further away we get away from religious speak, though, you know, the better off we are. And I think that's right, just a familial relationship. And one of the things we find in a familial relationship, I know you're having your first child, isn't that right, JB?
Yes. Looking forward to that. Very excited.
And Kirk, how many children do you have, if any?
I have none.
Okay, you have none.
No.
All right. I have 4.
Yeah.
I can tell you, never did I have my kids get on their knees and beg for anything.
No.
Not ever. Nor would I want them to.
No. I would hope not.
And if you know, Tow to Mao. I did have Mao Day at the house. No. You know, it's kind of it's one of those things where every time we look at Torah and we really consider, you know, the entire picture, like a home as an example, we know for sure that this doesn't really have anything at all to do with religion. It was one of the reasons that I could not stand that movie about Noah that was done recently, where he's shouting in the sky and talking about his faith and what will you have of me and all this nonsense. You know, things Noah clearly didn't do. Noah knew Yahweh. You know, Noah knew.
Why can't anyone ever adapt the story and just follow it? Quit adding to it, trying to make it more dramatic than it is.
Well, they probably have to point
to anyone.
They'd probably have to point to instructions because they'd run out of things to do. You know, the building of the ark was a monumental task, and I mean, when we look at which we went over last week, when you look at the dimensions of the ark, what we find today is their equivalent of our most advanced ships today, which was one of the reasons I always wondered, you know, why are you giving me these exact numbers? And now I know.
Yeah. Y'all did a pretty thorough show one time, didn't you? And Yada do that one time on the show. I remember listening. I don't know whether it was a Shattering Myth program or whether it was Friday. Was it? Yeah, that was extremely good, I thought, where y'all broke it all down and yeah.
Well, I was
just amazed by it. I'm saying, my gosh, look at duh.
Yeah, it's like, what's the point in finding the ark when you got the dimensions, you know? Yeah. Yahweh talks about his signature being all over everything, which is prophecy, right?
Oh, yeah.
And prophecy has a tendency to work both ways. It doesn't just work forward in time. It also works backward in time. And, you know, one of the things that really woke me up to the fact that I was finally dealing in reality, and I think, JB, you said the same thing, was when you found out, you know, about we were able to connect the 6 days to 15 billion years.
Yeah, the creation account. Most eye-opening thing I ever read.
Thank you. That's where I was at. I was blown away.
Yeah, well, I think it blew everybody away. I've even talked a lot to Roy about it. It blew, you know, he's a physicist, so he actually understands what's going on, and so he's written on a lot of that stuff too. So
that's nice to know it appeals to other than just us laymen.
Yeah, but yet this is the same thing, you know. And he talks about starting that flood with deep ocean water, you know, which I'm not sure if we've gotten to that yet, but we will. You know, and then we tie that to the Burkle crater. That would, you know, it's something like
solve that problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
The way it could be solved. How do you get that? How do you get deep water all the way from Indian Ocean to Turkey?
Well, you have a crater that Burkle there found that's 22 miles wide and 18,000 feet deep. Is how you do that, and it would throw so much. Yeah, well, it would throw so much moisture into the air that it would cause it to rain something like 40 days and nights, and it would cause a deluge into that area.
Which happens to be perfectly shaped like a bowl surrounded by mountains.
Yeah, that too. You know,
so that it would hold it. It would, you know, swell up and be the flood that we are described. It couldn't have happened in most other regions. If it hadn't been that specific region, it would not have done what it
worked
did.
In the same way. That's right. It wouldn't have. That's exactly right. And, you know, when we start looking at things like 40, too, 40 is what? It's completion, isn't it?
Testing.
That's the time of testing, yeah, absolutely.
You know, well, you know, it took 40 days to write the Torah. You know, the children of Yisrael were out there for 40 years. You know, they were captured by the Philistines, too, for 40 years, if you recall.
400 years in Egypt is, yeah.
Yep.
Yep. That's 40 squared 10 times. So, you know, 10 is also completion. Well, that was total completion. But, you know, I mean, these things all come to light in Yahweh's Torah. And I think that the reason 40 and 40 and 40 and 40, he shows us that over and over and over, is because we're looking at 40 Yobel in between every, you know, major incident that predicts Sukkah, you know, and his arrival. You know, 40.
Yeah. Every huge incident on Yahweh's calendar is on a 40 Yobel schedule.
Yeah, with little ones in between there, but you know, like at the 20 Yobel mark. But if you go 40 Yobel from the
but those
fall
aren't as big. Those are the secondary.
That's true.
Yeah, no, I understand. They're just markers along the way.
Yeah,
that's all they are. But you know, when you look at the 40 Yobel going from the time Adam and Chawah had to leave the garden to the covenant, that was 2,000 years, 40 Yobel, right? And then 40 Yobel to the time of the sacrifice, and then it's going to be 40 Yobel, because, I mean, he even tells us in Hosea. And I thought, by the way, when he says in Hosea, he talks about he'll be gone for 2 days and then with us on the third. Isn't that pretty interesting? I mean, you know, it kind of worked both ways, 2 days and each day being 1,000 years. You know, that was pretty clever. You know, it kind of covered both the fulfillment and then the other fulfillment, you know, of the arrival. So, anyway, from all the clean domesticated animals, take for yourself 7 males and 7 females, 2 related animals which are not clean, a male and a female. You know, and what's going on there is that that passage is advancing the scriptural concept of a substitute being sacrificed to resolve the consequences of sin. It also confirms that Yahweh's covenant was known to his people long before Moshe was afforded the honor to write it all down. So, Yahweh may have well, confirmed to Noah why all these animals were going in, but yet it wasn't a written Torah. Noah understood by clean, domesticated animals that Yahweh meant unblemished lambs, and he knew the reason, probably, for including them.
Well, if they were going to sacrifice them, he has to know why they're sacrificing them. So, of course, he knew. He was still celebrating the Moed Mikri just like us.
Yeah, because if
how
you go down
can you read that? I mean, it's got to, that's what he took them for.
Yeah, well, he says to keep alive the seed of life upon the whole land. That's what he said. It's kind of a confirmation of that. And then, indeed, on the passage of 7 days, wow, 7 again. I wonder why that's there, huh? Pointing to 7 again. I'll send rain down upon the region for 40 days and 40 nights, and wash off and wipe out accordingly all the living creatures which stand, whom relationally I made from upon the presence of the ground. Now, Yada writes here that dissecting this passage, we discover that the words most closely related to Yahuwah are Yakot, meaning fragile, and Yakos, those who ensnare and trap, and Yaka, indicative of those who are insolent, arrogant, haughty towards authority. So, with Quam meaning stands up, serving as the basis for Yaquam, it's not hard to see how this word describes man. The only upright animal which is inherently fragile yet uniquely arrogant, and its species best known for trapping its prey. And that's very true.
Pretty accurate description.
Yeah, I think so. And that's why we're getting into those base of those words that you were talking about, you two were talking about. Every time you get back there and you really think about those words, right? And that's why we have these amplifications.
Right.
They're very specific. He could have said man again, couldn't he? Or Ish, or Adam. But he didn't. He was talking about fragile, upright animals that are arrogant. And that pretty much describes the people that were running around destroying that whole area at the time. And then we also know that 40 quantifies completion of time of testing. It's because Yahweh uses 40 in this context. The pattern was established with the flood, but that was not the only place, nor was the duration of time ever random. The children of Yisrael wandered in the wilderness 40 years before they were allowed to enter the promised land. Yahweh took 40 days and nights to reveal the Torah to Moshe on Mount Horeb, a time of severely testing the Israelites. 40 was further confirmed when Yahusha was tested 40 days and nights in the wilderness prior to the consumption of his mission. And after enduring Satan's torments in Sheol during the mikra of unleavened bread and risen souls of the Messiah, now united with Yahweh's Spirit, spent 40 days with his disciples prior to his ascension, a time in which the disciples were being prepared for the ultimate test. And again, I think all that goes back to a Yobel, which is exactly what we go into next. If we go 33 CE to 40 Yobel, and it's instructive, and I know most of us are aware of it, but it's instructive to know that when Yahusha went into the temple and taught, he went right to Yashia and started talking about the Yobel, And how, this is one of the things that's always thrown me. How in the world could anybody have a clue, when the arrival will be if they don't even know what a Yobel is, nor consider it?
Couldn't it?
Well, obviously the rabbis and all knew he was coming, you know, in 33 CE, because they were starting to kill off the children. So I mean, that group of people knew it. So.
Well, I'm thinking more about these. You know, every now and then you get some cult group, and they're always following some religious leader of some kind. And the end is at hand, you know. They actually, it's funny, it's always at midnight too, you know. It's not like, or maybe it's high noon.
Is that Eastern or Central Time?
Yeah, and it's you know, we all know Yahweh's day begins when? That's in the evening, isn't it? It's right at sunset. So how in the world do they start using, you know, 12 midnight, you know, as the arrival or whatever? I don't even know where they get these things. I guess they just suck them out of the phone.
Local calendar, the local time frame, you know, where we whatever the English people did, that's what we do.
I don't think we do it, but that's what they do.
We start the day at midnight.
Yeah, well, yeah, we do. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you know, we can, of course, Shabbat's just starting, and it's evening here. I mean, you know, that's the way I look at it, evening to evening. But I got to tell you, you know, most of these people that are misleading the religious buffoons that follow them aren't even talking about the return. You ever notice that? They're usually talking about the rapture.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the funny thing about that is Towrah was always called the unknown day. That's the day nobody can figure out, other than we know it'll be on Towrah because he fulfills all his moed, you know, with pretty exact timing, you know, on those days anyway. But how in the world would you come up with, you know, some of these rapture dates that these clowns come up with, May 5th at midnight or, you know, whatever the deal is. You know, and they all go out and sell their homes and all that. And Towrah is the unknown day, right?
Well, they don't sell their homes. They get all the people that follow them to sell their homes and donate them to them. So I could spread the word, the end is coming.
Yeah, it's just,
you don't need that money. You know, the end's coming. That money's going to do you no good. You should just give it to me so I can warn people.
Yeah, I'm sure that's how they work.
Doesn't come. My bad. Well, I did a calculation, and you know, I realized at step 3 I forgot to carry the 1.
They always base it on Daniel instead of on a Yobel.
Yeah,
it's amazing. I never understand what it is they're saying. By the way, you know, they always go back to Daniel and start doing something in there, but it's really got nothing to do with it. Anyway, Noah engaged in doing this, everything consistent with that which relationally and beneficially Yahweh had instructed him to do. Wow, okay, so that's telling me that he literally followed the instructions of Yahweh, and it was beneficial, by the way.
That makes him Torah observant.
Yeah, right there. And Noah's son, 600 repetitions, and the flood existed, waters on the land. Noah, son, 600 repetitions. I'm not really sure what that means there. Can you guys help me?
I had not read that far ahead, but that's what makes us. What's he saying, Noah?
And Noah, son, that's what it says, son. I would think that would be plural, but it says Ben, son. 600 repetitions, and the flood existed, waters on the land. Now, what CW is saying here is that the terminology for the hundreds place was added by religious rabbis in the 15th century CE. No wonder I didn't know what this. Egyptian-influenced Paleo-Hebrew used symbols, not words, like Miyah, for factors of 10 and 100. One might deduce from this that Noah's sons were 60 at the time of the flood, and that Noah was 60 when he and his sons experienced the deluge. The Masoretic is so convoluted here that it's difficult to make a sentence out of these words, much less understand what they mean. So I don't feel like the only guy that's lost here.
No, it is confusing.
This is good. Okay. So I don't know what that means, and we don't have anything in the DSS on that particular passage, so I guess I have no idea what that means. 600 repetitions.
Usually translated and, represented to mean that Noah was 600 years old when the flood occurred, but that's, the usual understanding of it.
Okay, well, maybe that
you
would...
do see that phrasing a lot in Barashith, where it says so-and-so was a son of this many years.
Yeah, but 600 repetitions.
Greg may have left out the of. Well, Sanaa can mean years. Years.
Yeah, I understand. Or repetitions or changes could be the seasons. Yeah, I think it probably means years there. So 600 years would probably be a better way to put it than repetitions. But, okay, so let's say Noah was 600 years old, and I'm not sure. Let's see, 600. If we go with the 6 there, then I guess that would give us a picture of man, but they're coming into the the covenant when they hit the land over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not sure what his age would have to do with it, but knowing his sons and his wife.
Probably more due for timing, so we could look back now and see when exactly this occurred, and then use that as a baseline for timing events before it to verify, Yahweh's timeline once again. Like we talked about, Yahweh's, description of the past is so spot on and perfect. So a lot of the dates and times and ages given are for those purposes. So we can time these events and view them historically as being accurate.
Good point. Very good point. So knowing his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives went into the ark to escape from the presence of the flood waters.
Well, with this one other thing, it might have something to do with if you tell him how old he is, and then you start measuring and you start getting the ages of all the people afterwards, you understand the change that occurred after that. And I don't, so
because the atmosphere had been changed.
Yeah, atmosphere and everything as well. So maybe that's maybe it is there for that reason, but it's all guesswork, certainly on my part. So.
No, those could both be very valid points. I think probably.
It's just like where you were earlier. You were talking about how you've always wondered about all the measurements about the ark. I mean about the ship. So once again, it's until all of a sudden you get the Great Gestalt, or when the Ruach Kodesh tells us.
Somebody figures it out. I mean, obviously,
somebody figures out.
The fellow that wrote a book.
Well, of course, that's what it meant. So we'll throw it out to the audience and see who's going to work on it this week.
Well, it came to pass on the 7th day that the waters of the deluge came to exist upon the land. And based on this, as we look forward in time towards the fulfillment of Scripture's final prophecies, we should expect no diminishment in punctuality. The pattern depicted here is 7 and 40, which will be repeated with reliable precision. Exactly. That's exactly right, because in the 7,000th year, we're going to be rescued. I mean, we're going to be beyond rescue. We're going to be, having sukkah out there with Yahweh, and that's going to be exactly 40 Yobel from the time he made the sacrifice. So, these numbers aren't just arbitrary numbers. I mean, they're thrown out there for a reason. Go ahead, JB.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, well, I was going to ask a question, though. How is it that in the Christian communication, Christian community, and especially the preachers and all who study these things, and they do study these things, they write books about them constantly, to sell.
Yeah, like blood moons and stuff.
Yeah, all this, they can study all these numbers, and they keep seeing the 7s and the 40s and the Yobels and things like that, and they cannot they can go to Daniel, and you can extrapolate from a certain time that all the way to Yoshua walks through that gate on that year in 33 CE, and they can calculate all that, and they can calculate everything else that he tells you. Well, what?
I
they
think
can't figure out what the Sabbath is. I mean, come on, everybody knows what
they're
the Sabbath
blinded
is.
by their own beliefs. The greatest
burned and
detriment to
blinded by
reaching
the
is faith.
sun is
Well, I can believe that on a lot of them. I just
sun
can't
is
believe
what
unless they
Yahweh
just had swallowed the Kool-Aid and they said, okay, I'm going to take your money and this is my record, and I don't believe any of it. I mean, but gosh. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm just saying, just bothers me. So many precise numbers, so many places, so many times, and you can't, and everything else is, well, that can't be true. And I said, well, of course it, I mean, based on, what are you basing that on? If he says this is true for this many years, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and all the prophecies are so accurate. I mean, right down to Alas or Damascus, where we see twisted stones, you know, instead of just stumbled up rocks. I mean, what point do you not get it?
Well, I just think that most people, because of the mockery of religion, which is how we started this program tonight, you know, they think that they can just go ahead and make anything up in their brain that they want to, no matter how. You talk about twisted rubble, that's probably what's going on in their minds. I mean, what does it really matter what they think? You know, because what they think is typically always in opposition to Yahweh's words. I mean, you know, I was on a post today put out by a fellow Doug from UT where the guy told Doug he just didn't understand grace. Well, I understand grace. I know you two understand grace. You know? And it's not a good thing, you know. So I laid down, I think it was 4 or 5 passages that showed you, you know, you're not to be relying on the gratia for any form of, quote, salvation, you know, because if you do, you're dead. You know, you can't replace the mercy of the Torah with some nonsense from Roman or Greek goddesses.
Well, I have to confess, until he started doing questioning Paul, I hadn't considered Paul to be much. I never thought very much about Paul to begin with, so I didn't really get into. I wouldn't have gotten into the debate when I was a Christian on that because I didn't pay much attention to Paul. I really read Matthew more than anybody else, and Genesis and so forth. And when you start looking at what he said, and the fact that no one ever agreed with him, and they kicked him out, and he's all by himself, and on and on and on and on. You have to, at some point, if I had known more about Paul, or I would have gone, well, why would we listen to him to begin with? I mean,
well, no, that's exactly why at the circus they do listen to him, because it's very misleading. I mean, anybody in their right mind would understand that, you know, Paulos, he who was lowly and little, claimed to be the arbiter of Yahweh's words to the Gentiles, but yet, you know, why is it that all the letters to the Gentile nations came out from who? It was Yahuwah in Revelation. It was never Paulos.
Yeah.
Why did you pick Yahuwah?
Yeah, exactly.
But JB, you were going to chime in there. I heard you saying something.
I was just, thinking the same thing. I never really spent any time in Paul because, I came to know Yahweh and then immediately started, in the logical place in the beginning. And so by the time, Craig wrote Questioning Paul, I'd never really studied Paul other than, what people had talked to me about. I was still reading Genesis and trying to figure that one out.
Yeah, you were back there in Yahweh's words. Yeah.
It might be why it was so easy for me to just dismiss Paul. Was like, okay, well, I haven't invested any time in that. That makes sense. So now I don't got to bother with that. I'll stick back here.
I'm going to tell you,
we'll go with that.
Like you, I take Yahweh at his words. I really do. I think he's real straightforward. I don't think he wastes time with a lot of banter. I may not understand a passage like the one we just read. I mean, other than from the perspective of saying, okay, that's a timeline to look at, and that is what makes the most sense to me, by the way, JB. But at the same time, I know there are things clearly prescribed, and in Dabarim, when he talks about people that claim to be prophets for him, and they're putting the names of foreign gods in his mouth, which he never spoke, that prophet will wish to be dead, or words to that effect. I know he means those words when he says it. And I'll tell you how quick it came to me that Paul was a fraud when it was pointed out, when I read that he was pushing, the charities and the gratia. And I said, well, right there puts an end to him. I mean, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more to be said. Either Yahweh's telling you the truth or he's lying. I mean, right there's a dividing line. It didn't take me a lot to come to the point. Of course, now I know the lowly and little and the passages in Yahowah and in Shabbat and,
now there's so many nails in that coffin you couldn't pry it open if you tried.
Yeah, he brings them up quite a bit. There's not a person in the world that fits Shabbat other than that ever walked the face of the planet, other than Paulos. I mean, whoever it was, whoever this plague of death was, his name would be Sheol. We know that, and we know he'd be proud and puffed up. He was so proud.
There are only two well-known Shaols in all of history, and that was written after one of them died.
Yeah.
So it ain't about that one.
And he wasn't there at the fulfillment of the Moed in Jerusalem, but Sheol was, and Paulos was, and then to go on further saying that he would mislead Gentiles from all over the world. Boy, I just don't know who else it can be. In fact, it cannot be.
With genitals, Paul's big issue with circumcision.
Yeah, and the fact he liked looking at other people's genitals. I mean, that's probably why he was all the time worried about circumcision or not, very strange stuff that anybody could read that and come to any other conclusion if they were being thoughtful. But that goes back to what you were saying, Kirk. How can they do this and how can they do that? Well, when Yahweh tells us not to, consume the wild boar, as an example. And I don't know if you know that passage or not.
Yeah, a little bit.
But I'm gonna go ahead and just pull it up real quick. And this is one of those things that tells us that Yahweh is not really talking about wild boar. As we know, in Babylon, the story went that the sun impregnated the earth on Ishtar, today's Easter, and then 9 months later, today's Christmas, he was born. But he lived 40 years and he was killed by a wild boar. And so to celebrate this, every Ishtar, you'd knock off the Easter ham, so you were getting back at the boar. But here's what he says, and this is in Davarim 14:8. And therefore, the wild boar, indeed, it has a hoof divided. And what I think that means when it comes down to a hoof divided, I think pretty clearly that's talking about Yahusha. Although they want to say Jesus, Jeebus, whatever, Bugs Bunny if they want to, I guess. They understand that the Messiah came here. But he says, but it does not have a cut. So in other words, you can have the Messiah show up, and if you still think that blood smeared on a pagan cross was the plan, you haven't really chewed the cud because you don't even realize that Yahusha, right, was fulfilling the Moed Mikra.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Accurate.
Or when they say cardia, and in the Greek, and I've seen seen it written in the Greek about the 3 days, like Yonah was going to spend 3 days in the belly of the great fish. He was going to spend 3 days in the cardia. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that cardia is the circulation of life. We know what a cardiovascular system is. We know what a cardio doctor is. That's the heart of the land. Mm-hmm. And the heart of the land is not a cemetery. It's not a tomb.
Not a
that tomb. Yeah, the tomb happened to be in the heart of the land, and he was there for 3 days fulfilling what? The Moed Mikra, which was the very purpose of him showing up to begin with, fulfill the Torah. But it goes on to say, after it says doesn't have a cud, so therefore it is according to you it is unclean according to you. Now here's the kicker. You got to love this. From the preaching and publishing of creatures like them, say what? From the preaching and publishing of creatures like them, you should not continually consume. You know, you've done a little hunting, JB. I don't know if you hunted wild boar or not. I have. I've got to ask you, have you ever known wild boar to preach or publish anything?
Well, I've never hunted boar, but I know people who do, and yeah, I ain't never heard of that before.
How about you, Kirk? You ever hear of that?
No, that's too ridiculous, yeah.
Yeah,
You know what ain't talking about a wild boar.
Yeah. Now I love this next line.
Boars can be pretty stupid, actually.
Oh yeah. And with their stupid and contemptuous decaying dead bodies, you should literally not make contact on an ongoing basis. Whoa. I think, I'm not sure if he's talking about the people doing the preaching and the publishing or if he's talking about the zombie Jesus there. I think it's the zombie Jesus he's talking about. What do you think? And with their stupid and contemptuous decaying dead body.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah. Could very well be.
Maybe it's a bit of both.
Yeah, that's probably more like it.
What do you think, JB?
What Yahweh writes. Most of the time it's more than fun meaning.
Kind of a double whammy there. I mean, I had to laugh when I read that because, that is absolutely true, as we know by looking at the Pesach instructions and actually looking at what Yada Yahweh wrote and also Dode wrote. When you're talking about the soul as a ransom in Sheol, it meets back up with what? The light, the Ruach, right?
That's part third, yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't say anything about the body other than in the Pesach instructions where it does tell us that it's burned up overnight in the flames. Poof, it's gone. So, I didn't mean to get off the subject, but I just thought it, was relevant in this situation.
Let me ask you a question. It's just something, as we're talking about Ruach and what he returns to as light. Is there anything in the universe other than light that could live forever and thus also live beyond the universe other than light?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'll ask Roy. I've been talking to Roy recently, but because we've been talking about light and everything. So when Yahweh says I'm Haya, I exist, and then he uses the metaphor that he's light everywhere and that the Torah is light everywhere.
And of course we found the light in the Torah.
I'm just connecting some dots, and I'm thinking, wow, that's really quite profound. He wants you to become light. He doesn't want you to have a body. Therefore, once again, in addressing the body part that you were just talking, his life has nothing to do with his body. It's all about the soul attaching itself to the light and becoming light. It's the only way for this to actually work. Physics, the only thing that stands out physics, right?
Well, a physical body would be a net minus in a situation.
Well, we know that, but even if we could put you and live forever on the earth, it would still be
you get bored pretty quick.
And then if you destroy the universe, then where would you be then? You'd be destroyed with it. So it's not forever. And he said he's going to destroy the universe and build a new one. So the whole plan has to be about light. So hanging on to these bodies in the sense of, and talking about that, and this always showing this dead Jesus on the cross, and all that sort of thing. What a stupid idea for a symbol.
Well, and wouldn't that be perfect if you were Ha-Satan, this picture of basically a God that's dead, hanging there on your symbol? Wouldn't that be beautiful to you?
Well, for him, it's
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Really. But we'll move on here. And no, I agree with you. A physical body would be a net minus if you're moving at the speed of light, because I can promise you it would fall apart. Just ain't gonna make it. We're not all that aerodynamic. I don't even think a pinhead is that aerodynamic. What do you think?
No.
It's, again, in repetition, and I think it's probably in years. 600 years Noah lived. Okay, so that's got to be in years. And why it's repeated twice, I don't know. But in the second month, in the 17th day of the month, in that day, a great magnitude and quantity of deep ocean water and all underground springs burst forth, and the floodgates were opened. Okay, now, that's important because now we've got confirmation with the Burkle crater. It just happened to happen, roughly 5,000 years ago when Noah would have been walking the planet. Now, that's pretty astounding, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's prophecy in reverse. Go ahead.
There's no one in any of these periods of time that would have understood any of that. It is obviously for us. It's obviously for us.
And that's one of the things that the Ruach and information is going to be poured out, at the end of the age. I think Yada said it before. We have more information available to us than the very children of Yisrael.
Oh, yeah.
That crossed the parted waters with Yahusha. And the word does say Yahusha did that, by the way. So that's another thing. How do you overlook that? I mean, I don't know how you do it, but I guess there's ways to do anything if you want to just close your eyes and put your fingers in your ears. But I think that's kind of a metaphor that Yahusha used, wasn't it? Those that have eyes can see and those that have ears can hear.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to really work at not having ears. Now, he said, Tahawums. The etymological past tells us that the word is based on an Akkadian root meaning deep seawater. Deep seawater. So, most of the time, I think when you read a KJV, if I can remember back to reading that, it just says it broke open deep cisterns or something. But the word there that's Akkadian is based on ocean water. And so that's what it said. That's exactly what happened, too. And we have the evidence to prove it. The rain continued to exist upon the land for 40 days and 40 nights. Again, 40, completion, a time of testing, a time of completion. Scripture says that the animals in this region east of Lake Van were directed by Yahweh to come to Noah peacefully without hunting them down, trapping them, coaxing them, and without Noah's family, having to chase them down, or without them eating one another.
They weren't herding
male
cats.
and female. Yeah, I mean, it was just as simple as that. Yahweh directed them, and I believe Yahweh could do absolutely anything like that.
Yeah.
Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them entered the ark, they and every animal, according to its kind, and all domestic animals according to their kind, and every creature which moves about on the ground after their kind, and every winged creature and bird according to their kind, coming to Noah inside the ship, a pair of 2 of each kind of creature in association with his spirit and life. Okay. 2 in association with his spirit and life. What do you get out of that?
Well, it doesn't have to be in them, but he's actually covering them. The spirit of light, that's the Ruach Kodesh.
Yeah, and I think the 2, I think the 2 would be the Ruach, and I think Yahusha. I kind of make a, he's talking about a spirit of life. I mean, the Ruach certainly is the spirit of life, but it was all over Yahusha, and they were a pair. That's something that's really missed in Christianity, You know, you're looking at just this person walking around without realizing that the Spirit of Yahweh was all over Yahusha from start to finish.
Yeah.
You know, with the exception of Sheol. You know, I mean, you know, and obviously the reason that the Ruach couldn't be with Yahusha in Sheol is simply because that's the Spirit of Yahweh, and the Spirit of Yahweh, you know, I mean, that's how Sheol is defined, as a lack of the Spirit of Yahweh, so it can't be in Sheol.
No.
Isn't that correct?
Well, yeah, he had to do that by himself. Otherwise, it would be he couldn't go there. Oh, the set apart spirit couldn't go there, so that's a given.
Right, and I could be very wrong about Yahusha, though, but, you know, I'm thinking in terms of a pair. When I see something like two there, and of course now when I read Yahusha, I realize that's, you know, a diminished part of Yahweh all over a physical body. That's two parts, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Could be a manifestation, sure.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that's very sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be the right hand of Yahweh. You know.
Mm-hmm.
The entering males and females from every creature came to and entered just as relationally he, God, had instructed, and Yahweh shut the door behind them. Okay, so they were they were instructed, and guess what? They were spared too, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's always a good idea to follow Yahweh's instructions. And sadly, most of the religious world, they not only don't know Yahweh's instructions, but they don't care to know them.
Well, that's true. You have to have that attitude, or you couldn't do what you can't be what they are as Christians, or what I was as a Christian, unless you just shut your mind to everything.
And have blind faith.
Mm-hmm.
Blind faith.
Ignorance is bliss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. It abides, man.
Ignorance is truly damnation.
Yeah, that's what I put.
The flood existed 40 days on the land. The waters increased and lifted up the ark high above the ground. The waters prevailed to a significant degree, exerting substantial force on the land, and the lofty mountains were completely covered and concealed. There under the whole sky, water prevailed 15 cubits. Okay, so that's over 20 inches, you know, of rain, deep on the higher elevations so as to hide and veil the hills. Okay? Now, we're going to go back to Eretz here, because those who want to believe that Eretz means the entire earth, even though, again, there was that perfectly good word to use, Tabel, right?
Mm-hmm.
As in the planet, you're faced with two insurmountable problems in this passage. First, there's no evidence of a massive flood covering the entire earth ever, much less one occurring, you know, 2400 to 3000 BCE.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's overwhelming proof to the contrary. And while there are considerable examples of regional floods and a plethora of accounts regarding them, mean sea level has never been 29,000 feet, give or take a few cubits, higher than it is today. If there had been a global flood of this proportion, we would find evidence of enormous saltwater layers in the Arctic snowpack, but there isn't any. We don't find them. We would find evidence of the extinction of fish, fresh and saltwater varieties, because fresh water would have become too saline and ocean water too pure for fish of either environment to survive. So there would have been a massive extinction and fallout of all kinds of fish. There is no such thing, no evidence at all that ever happened any time, much less 4,000 years ago. So not only was Noah the benefit of an aquarium in his yacht, landlocked 600 miles from the nearest ocean in eastern Turkey, but Yahweh didn't send fish marching his way 2 by 2.
Or kangaroos.
Just fish flopping on the ground a couple thousand miles.
Yeah, or kangaroos. Yeah,
this
good,
way, guys.
Good. Not only the fish have to come marching 2 by 2,
and wallabies.
leaving the global, but the wallabies and all the species of the kangaroos, I guess. But because I'm sure in 5,000 years they haven't evolved. So if we're talking about the kangaroos, how'd they get there? What they do? Make them boats? So they have their own little personal yachts to take them over there.
Well, apparently kangaroos.
I don't think there were any elephants on there, or some of these gigantic animals in Africa or in Asia. I mean, they could always migrate back. If there was like the Asian elephants that did appear in northern Africa and all, they could have migrated back after the fact. He didn't need to put them on the same ship with him. I mean, he saved the land the animals mostly that were right there. And then they put them back. But to your point about everything being filled up with water, if you thought about seawater wiping out there would be almost no fresh water at all left.
Yeah. No, there wouldn't be.
Because everything at least is just about salt water, except for what's coming out of a few coming out of underground rather. So my gosh, that would have been more than just 40 days of destruction. It had been a million years of destruction. It would have killed just about everything as far as the mammals, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Of course it would have. And again, that water would have been way too saline for freshwater fish to live. I mean, you're talking about the oceans and the rivers, just flat out mixing. That's what you're saying. I mean,
so he's obviously after these people.
Yeah, that's what he said.
I know that some animals are going to be killed too, but that's why he put the animals on the boat and he put a certain number of people. So that brings up the point of these. I want to ask a question to y'all just to toss out for a minute. There were, in the days of prior to that flood, you had two groups of people, right? You still had the people that in Genesis were existing that did not have an asama.
Right.
And you still had some that were intermarried with the people who did have an asama.
The hybrid.
They really became the evil people that the world really started to fall apart there. Mm-hmm. What do y'all think about? Did he wipe out all of those, or were there still some of those without an asama left outside of that area, the Eretz area?
I think there were plenty left outside of that area.
I've kind of grown to think that myself.
Oh, I absolutely.
Well, there has been. There's plenty of evidence to show at that point in time there was life, humans, humanoid life all over Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and also, the Aborigines go way back.
Yeah.
They go back 40,000 years, supposedly.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
Certainly they go back at least 4,000 years.
Like humans all over the planet at that point.
No, they claim
Y'all wasn't interested in killing them.
So here's the question I really want to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
You had those group of people in that area, and I'm just talking, so nothing scriptural. I'm just thinking here out loud among friends and family members. When they had these terrible people, or they became even more terrible, more animalistic, when Cain started marrying into them, and others married in later. Mm-hmm. As the populations grew, they became these horrible, horrible people who had no respect for anything. To the point that Yahweh says that he just about repents. Well, no, repent's not a good word, but he wants to turn from his original idea, right?
Right.
Okay, now...
And they were religious in nature, too. I mean, let's not forget that.
That plus everything else. But, I mean, they just have the potential to be horrible to every type of living creature. Now, he cleans them out, starts over. Now, if our supposition is correct, and there's a lot of those people still around on the earth afterwards, and Noah has these 8 people whose set up with like 4 groups, and Japheth goes up to Europe, and another goes to Africa, and another goes to Asia and Middle East, and then on to Asia and so forth. These people had to have encountered those people in marriage, and is that why we have now deteriorated to the point that we're so horrible?
Well, I have to say,
I'll
tell you one thing. I think it does, and I'll tell you one thing.
They're just people that don't care about anything. They would wipe out their mother and their entire family if they thought they could make something on it to get more power for it.
Well, I mean, look, as
where are
was in the
these evil
beginning,
people coming from today that we're dealing with so much? I mean, just
as was in the beginning, so will be the end.
yeah.
Nephilim means those who prostrate themselves, who are cast down and die. I mean, that's what it means.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or Nephil means, and Nephilim is just the plural of Nephil. You know, I don't know if you know it or not, but Ishmael's second daughter, or second to the last daughter, I can't remember, her name was Nephal-Z.
Really? Wow.
You know, when you start talking about people prostrating themselves, I mean, what do you think in terms of? I think in terms of religious Catholics and Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, or religious people in general, I should say.
Yeah, just about everybody bows down around the world.
But when I know that one of Ishmael's daughters was named Nephal-Z, then that tells me something. There's an actual connection there. To Nephil.
So, you think about it in terms of, not to be racist in this, but think about it in terms of a racial purity. So you have this small group of humans with the Nesama who were left alive after the flood.
That's
At
right.
first, they're pretty much breeding with each other, which is why you end up getting an Abraham later on. And, the Yisraelite race later on, because that is the more pure strand, descended from Adam. But the others that went out started breeding with these non-Nesama humans. And so, take it in terms of just a simple one-to-one. A being with a Nesama and a being without a Nesama will produce a being with a 50% Nesama. And then you take that out beyond and beyond and beyond. By the time you get generations and generations later to where we are now, the portion, if you take that just simple one-to-one, the portion of a Nesama in most humans today would be virtually nil, which would explain what we're seeing in most humans today.
Well, people can be so brain dead as well as so cruel.
Yeah. And then you're going to get the ones who are extremely without. It's not going to be, everyone's balanced, which explains the Hitlers, the Mohammeds, the jihadists of the world, are people who have virtually zero Nesama left within them.
I mean, where do you get somebody to work in outlets?
Yeah.
I mean, this is your job. Kill all these people.
Yeah.
Torture all these people. Where do you get people that become?
And you do.
By the way, most of them enjoyed it.
They didn't want to get killed themselves.
But
you get the ones that just enjoyed the pleasure of doing it. And that's the real ones. Like I said, there's a difference between, there's a gun to your head. If you don't do this, you're going to die. They're going to kill your family. They're going to kill everyone you care about. You do it, out of that, versus you get some of these, like you read some of the accounts, especially during, one of the greatest examples is during the, Holocaust, where these people just got pure enjoyment out of what they were doing. They weren't doing it
you can go back to Mao. You can go back to Mao, and they had children just shooting adults in the head. Now, you could say, okay, I'm not going to put that on the child, although as a child, I think I would have found that pretty wild myself, okay?
But when you have a gun to your head, if it's you kill them or you get killed, it's it's a little harder to blame them. But
no, I was about to say, I'm not going to.
This where these people they got off on it.
Somebody put them up to it. That's my point.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But they shouldn't enjoy being put up to it.
That is particularly evil to have a child shooting people in the head that won't kowtow to Mao.
Or they do it in Africa every day.
Yeah, I know. It's particularly evil. I mean, you're not talking about your own personal corruption. You're saying I have to corrupt a child as well. you know. But
or, you know,
I
you
think
hear stories of like Che Guevara would have the mothers of people who were scheduled to be executed come into his office so they could beg for their son's life, and then he would hold them to the window, call out their son to have him shot in front of him.
yeah,
You can't tell me that guy had an Osama.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That
Well,
is
how
the
about
most
the people that run around
dysfunctional
and follow him? How about those that follow him?
Yeah.
I mean, what can you say about them? I mean, it's the same thing. You know, so it would take somebody that doesn't really have much of an ability to connect dots or, you know, exercise good judgment, you know, to go down the road and say follow a Che Guevara or follow an Obama, for that matter.
Yeah.
You know.
Less
I
direct
mean,
with people like Obama or Bush, but the same is true.
no,
They're a little
agree.
better at
You know?
hiding it, but
Yeah, they're not quite as out front, although I think it's getting pretty out front. You know, I mean, they just recently funded to the tune of $770 million. This way they're talking about needing more tax money from us. $770 million to repair and build mosques worldwide. Now, why in the hell would an American taxpayer?
Proving that, you know, it is a deteriorating thing within our, you know, race, or within the human race. Is the Osama is deteriorating. The fact that it used to have to be hidden, and now it's just out in the open.
Oh, it's so open.
You know,
so much information now. It's scary.
That it's, you know, the Osama within the human race is deteriorated.
Well,
I just think it's surreal. How about surrealistic paintings? Tell us what that means, Kirk. I mean, I'm looking at this, and I think it's surreal.
It's very much from craziness in your mind. I mean, if you look at a Salvador Dali, you don't even have to look at what the meaning is. You just look at it and say, my gosh, that is crazy. It's like a bad dream or somebody on an acid trip or something like that. I've never been on one, so I don't know, but that's the way they describe them. But that's why this message, the things that we discuss all the time, and I often feel, and people ask me sometimes, and I often feel that, you know, why doesn't this resonate with so many people? Why there's so few, rather, that it does resonate with, and that's got to be the answer. I mean, they can't be just that stupid. It has to be something in your DNA or something inside you that is so off. You couldn't embrace this if you wanted to.
I think that's what Yahweh says. It's not.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he does too. But I mean, I maybe just be paraphrasing a little bit. But
they can't see
because this is so straightforward, so plain, so redundant. I don't mean to sound redundant, but over and over, repetitive, over and over, telling the same story from 1,000 different angles, and it's all the dots are not that hard to connect on most of them. I realize that we've still got thousands and millions of things we can figure out, but the surface value, you cannot miss this if you just look at it or listen to it. If somebody read it to you.
The things it takes to join the covenant, we know that. You can read the 119th Psalm, and you got that.
Yeah. Just with a handful of scrolls, if you like. With a hand bit of information, it's like you get it. And still they don't get it. And the benefits are obviously so great, so thrilling, so unimaginably wonderful. Like, I'm going to be light, and light can turn itself into matter. So I've wanted to feel the warmth or wetness of water or something. I can do that and turn back. I can go here. I can go there. There are no limitations on my life.
I've got a question for you guys while we're at it here, since we're just, you know, these are right now.
I didn't mean to get you off track, so sorry about that.
No. You didn't. I mean, these are very good points. I mean, you're talking about, and I've always said that. I believe there are people that have known Osama walking the planet. They're still cannibals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They have to be.
You know, I mean, what, do they have an Osama? You know, not a chance in my mind that they have an Osama. But you know, my question to you guys is that, yeah, we see all this happening, and we see everything that's happening today very similar to what was happening in the flood.
I think everybody's bad. I don't know how bad that was, but it's on a grander scale because there's so many more people now.
Yeah. Humankind has come full circle. That's term.
Full circle from the, one of the things that always struck me, one of the things that strikes me, and this is something that I honestly believe, I think, and you guys, feel free to chime in. I believe that they're norming, believe it or not, Islam, while they're claiming this is the number one enemy of the West. I think that's why they're bringing so many Muslims in, and we already know that it was intentional to tear up Syria. They had that whole plan from the start. But I have to say, I think they're going to merge the two religions, because in Babylon, Lord Baal, Ishtar, the Lord's covenant, he was the national sun deity, and the lunar deity was Sin, who was worshipped in the form of a crescent moon. So I think that just as in Babylon, the way they the two were really one, I think they're going to do the same thing here in the world.
I see that right on the money. The world is even. I've been doing a lot of studying of history. There's so much information now that was never available before, and even today, some stuff we went over that was so frighteningly horrible from government records on what we have done. I'm going to do a little more research before I bring it up, but I can't believe. I'm surprised Yahweh doesn't just wipe us out right now. I mean, as of today, I'm kind of really depressed. I'm just low about God.
How anybody can even follow leaders?
I can't believe we're as horrible as we are. I'm talking about the Western world and what we've done to all the rest of the world. It's just horrible.
Yes, it is. But how anybody can even follow leaders, what they do to their own people, is astounding to me. Do you know how they develop methamphetamine?
No.
The only way I learned from watching Breaking Bad.
Okay, well, the way they developed methamphetamine was Hitler wanted his guys, the German war machine, I should say.
Oh yeah,
they wanted
to keep fighting.
Yeah, they just wanted them to endlessly fight and not have to be fed much and to keep going and going and going.
I have to sleep.
Well, the way they started it was they took prisoners, Jewish prisoners from prisoner of war camps, and they strapped 40-pound rocks on their back, and they marched them until they died. They found out that some of them went 3 days before they fell down dead. Now, these were people, obviously undernourished, didn't have a lot of body mass and were pretty weak to begin with, but they could march these guys up to 3 days before they fell down dead. And they would keep walking. That's what they found out. So then they tried it out with a German ski patrol. And now this is Germany doing this to a German ski patrol. And this German ski patrol of a dozen guys, they kept going and going and going, and they could never feel their feet. And guess what? All their feet had to be amputated. And they said, wow, this is a great drug. We're going to use it on our troops. Now,
that is so disturbing that somebody would say that. And they did. I know they did.
That's what they did. They didn't just say it. They did.
I mean, that they're excited that they can do this.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, that is so disgusting.
Yeah, what we're talking about. You can't tell me those people had a functioning Nasama or a Nasama at all at that point.
Now, well, it gets better than that. It gets better than that. So the Americans said, what the hell? We're missing the boat. The British and the Americans. They're missing the boat, man. We need a drug like that. So they came up with about a dozen drugs. And one of them, I think they're called Doxy today. One of them was Doxy. They all worked about the same way, but the one thing they found about Doxy was that, and I hope I have that right, it can be looked up, but just for the sake of it, let's say Doxy. I think it was Doxidine or something like that.
Doxycycline, I believe.
Yeah, okay, maybe that's what it was. The one thing they found about that particular drug is that It made you fearless. You were just brave. And they figured that out because they had these bombers that, you know, when you missed your target and you're going through all kinds of flak and all that, they'd turn right around and do it again. So they said, that's the drug we're going to go with. Now, guess who they tried it out on? They tried it out on a tank regiment over there when the British were getting their asses handed to them in North Africa. And they sent a regiment or a battalion of these tanks and their support, you know, into Rommel's tank divisions, which destroyed them. But they kept going deeper and deeper and deeper, and they fought till the last man died. And they go, man, that's the one we want to use. Now, that's what the Western leaders did to their people. That's what Nazi Germany did to their people. Isn't this lovely to have these great leaders that really care about these men in uniform?
They don't care about the men in uniform. That's fodder.
Yeah, we still idolize Roosevelt.
They don't care.
Yeah, but when I saw that, this is on History Channel. They just put it out there now. You know, like I said, we live in a surreal world. They're not even hiding what they did.
No,
you know,
and nobody knocks on the door and says, "Hey, you got to pull this." I guess they think nobody has the ability to.
Americans, Republican or Democrat, will tell you that Roosevelt was a great president.
Yeah, and he was a bum doing stuff like this. You know, you sit there and you know, as far as I'm concerned, he's a war criminal at that point.
He's worse than that.
You know, and I don't know how much worse you can get than, you know, war criminal. I mean, that kind of entails everything, you know, from rape to murder to, you know, you name it.
Yeah, okay. That's good.
Piece of shit, disgusting human beings.
I just need a few more adjectives.
Yeah, maybe that's why we need to amplify that or something. But, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the situation today, and I wonder just how much of what they're doing to who. Because, you know, they haven't forgot about the use of those drugs. You know, they haven't forgot about that. We've gotten a lot more advanced chemically. That's right. That's right. And this stuff will make you brave. Well, I think we're about out of time.
Oh, are we right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think we're already over time.
Yeah, but it's been a pleasure, and I know we kicked the can, we went backward there, but I just really wanted to point out there on I thought it was a pretty good discussion, and I enjoyed it, you know, so.
Well, let me ask you, is he coming back next Friday, or are we all next Friday?
We're on our own, man.
Okay, so
we're in trouble again.
Okay, we want to pick up here, so I'll be better with next week. You won't? Oh, goodness. Who's going? You're not
going
out of
town.
right?
Me and the wife are going on a small vacation. We'll do
me a favor there, partner. Send me over, because I have the hardest time anyway, but send me over the actual instructions, because Kirk isn't much of an IT guy. Craig will be back that week. That'll be the first week he's back. Okay, so you are going to be here next week. I'll be here next week. It's the week after next. I won't be here.
Okay, so we'll see you Friday. Okay, so good.
I was going to say, you were shaking us both up over here.
Trembling and trembling with fear.
The 18th will be off. We're traveling. My brother-in-law's got a med school interview in Miami, and so me and the wife, since we're off work that week, are taking a mini vacation. Okay.
We'll
be in Florida.
We'll all meet again.
Well, one other thing, you just brought up trembling and fear. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the interesting things that Yahweh talks about that caused the Yisraelites to walk away from him was their fear. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. Well, they were frightened by him when he was talking to them right there in the desert. I mean, on Mount Horeb.
Yeah, no, I know that, but I mean, even beyond that, he says you walk away from him because of your fear. He says that in Hosea when he's talking about the reason they walked away from him, shaking in fear.
But you have to teach somebody to be afraid of Yahweh.
Well,
you really got to teach somebody to be afraid of Yahweh.
Message.
I guess you do.
I think you just run to your daddy. If you knew that's your daddy, you just run to your daddy.
But in all religion, you have a fearsome religious deity don't you? I mean,
Well,
you're supposed to be afraid of them.
You got to.
Right?
If you're going to pill it, you got to have that.
Yet we have a creator of the universe that has nothing to do with religion, and he talks about fear being a really bad thing.
Mm-hmm. He talks about being a dad, loving you.
Yeah, bending down to help you.
Help you, lift you up. Don't bow down to me.
Yeah.
Pick yourself up and one more with me, and let's talk.
Yeah, and I'll bend down to help you, though. Yeah, I mean, that's that's pretty...
Yeah, don't worry about anything. I'll protect you.
That's pretty important stuff, but a lack of fear, shy of IT, is probably a good idea. I mean, I just thought I'd throw that in there since you were shaking with fear, Kurt.
You think about it, even if you had a father that you ran in fear from, is that the kind of father you wanted? Like, even if that was your example of a father growing up, you always wanted something different. You wanted a father you could run to and embrace.
Sure.
Yeah, those of us who were lucky enough to have that, had that model, but those that didn't still have that was not what they wanted.
No.
You have in your mind your ideal of what your father should have been, and that's what Yahweh is.
Right. Yeah, I mean, look, a creator of the universe that says, I want to interact with my creation, and I'm willing to do most anything, save lie, to do it. Wow.
That just made me think. Yeah, you said save lie. Think about that. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this since I have a child coming up. But one of the things I was talking about in the chat room earlier was, I'm so happy that my daughter is going to grow up and never have the lie of Santa Claus, never have the lie of Christmas. Most parents aren't willing to not lie to their kids. They all know that Santa Claus ain't real, but they'll lie to their kids and tell them that Santa is. Yahweh don't lie to you, and I'm not going to lie to my kid.
I lied to mine. I lied to mine when they were growing up. I went right along with every other idiot in town. I sure did. I mean, that's
you didn't know Yahweh then. Now that you do, you definitely wouldn't.
No, well, I would definitely not be doing the same thing. I'd be taking the route that, say, Tommy Driggers took, or the route you're taking. I mean, I wouldn't be, or Terry. I wouldn't be, out there teaching the lies of Babylon and helping to advance the death of my children.
I look forward to kids, angry parents going, why did your daughter tell my son or my daughter that there's no such thing as Santa Claus? I look forward to that because I'm just going to be like, well, because there's not, and I'm not going to lie to my kid like you do.
And the same thing.
I'm not going to convince my kid to follow some pagan religious rites because that's what society says.
Yeah, and Easter bunnies. That's really a beautiful one. Here, eat a bunch of unhealthy crap and put it in your body, it'll probably give you cancer by the time you're 25 years old. And this is all brought to you by the Easter bunny. I mean, that's cute, isn't it? One of the even as I was young, as a child, they'd give us Easter baskets, and my parents were atheists. I mean, they were just doing what the normal Joe in town did. But, the bottom line is that I thought there was something extremely weird about Easter. I mean, I always thought that, even as a kid. It just seemed off,
I don't know, as a young kid, I was just like, ooh, candy. I
could get into the candy, but it just seemed like a weird, to me.
Oh, I never believed any of it. It was just like, I'll shut my mouth. Yeah, I believe in an Easter bunny. Just keep giving me candy. Even as a kid. Hence the reason my teeth are as horrible as they are now. But
but even though I understood, certainly at a very young age, there really wasn't a Santa Claus. I think kindergarten or so, you figure that out. I was still very excited about the Christmas season.
Sure.
It was one of those things. You knew there was no Santa, but you were afraid to admit it because if you told your parents you didn't believe in Santa, you weren't going to get any presents.
Oh, no, my parents weren't like that. Yeah, but my parents weren't like that. It's like, what do you want for Christmas? And you told them. I mean, they were atheists, they weren't trying to cover up so much for Santa Claus, although they played the game when you were tiny, But I think by the time kindergarten or first grade rolled around, everybody realized there was no Santa Claus. I remember my daughter Jessica coming home and saying, I heard there's no Santa Claus. And I said, well, there isn't one, Jess.
Yeah, I remember
You're looking at him, pal.
Not an extremely religious family, but like I said, we kept the major holidays. But I remember talking with my friends at school about, oh, there's no Santa. No, I don't know. Yeah, but I would never say it to my parents because I'm like, I don't know. If I say this,
don't feel a good
am I
deal.
going to stop getting them presents?
All those toys.
I didn't want to risk it because for me that was all Christmas was presents.
Yeah, that's about it.
There was no Jesus and Christmas in my family. It was
Yeah,
all about
I agree with that. I agree with that, but I thought the colorful lights and all that, lent itself to the season. Of course, I don't even go look at the lights these days. I don't want anything at all to do with any of it. Because I understand the disingenuous of it all.
I try to walk the dog before it gets dark.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, I understand the disingenuousness of it all, and I do understand that that's Ha Satan's shtick.
Oh, yeah.
Make everything look warm and fuzzy that kills you, and that will definitely kill you, right?
Yeah. Okay, guys, it was been great.
Oh, wait, okay, you're tired
again next Friday, right?
You bet.
Yeah, I'll talk to you next Friday.
JB, we're counting on you, pal.
Shabbat.
I'll be here next week. Don't worry.
Okay.
Talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.